When I think of some of Ben's most iconic aliens, something that I feel is overlooked is why they're beloved by so many in the first place. Of course, cool moments and cool scenes come to mind, but a key word to explain what makes an alien iconic is consistency. Take Heatblast or Diamondhead for example. No matter how many times they were used between all 4 Ben 10 series, they were consistently used in amazing and creative ways. Their popularity from their debut up until the end remained some of the highest of any alien. While those two were fortunate regarding love in the fandom, some aliens weren't so lucky. The prime example is Humongosaur. Due to factors such as overexposure and lack of creativity, he fell off in popularity. It became so bad to the point that he's basically one of the most hated aliens in the entire fandom nowadays, and yours truly even made a video about it. Humongosaur wasn't able to stay consistent in utilization and popularity, but he's far from the only alien with this issue. There is one alien that I feel like also has an issue of consistency that caused a lot of the fandom to sort of switch up on this alien. Not to a degree of, say, liking blocks after a decade of hate, but enough to where people don't put this alien on a pedestal like they did over a decade ago. That alien in question is Big Chill. I have noticed a more vocal outcry on how Big Chill was ruined and he's no longer the peak alien people loved him as. And as I saw this outcry, I started to think to myself, was Big Chill actually ruined? Now if you're a longtime Ben 10 fan, the answer may seem obvious at first. However, I don't think it necessarily is, and I want to talk about why in this video. For this video, I want to establish who Big Chill is. I want to talk about his legacy before and after his supposed ruining, and why he was so loved, and how nowadays people see him as an alien who's fallen from grace. To properly start, as always with these alien videos, I want to start by talking about who exactly Big Chill is. Big Chill is a necrophrygian from the planet Kilmus and would first appear in the Alien Force episode, Kevin's Big Score. Big Chill's design when it comes to an intricate standpoint is one of the most clever of the Alien Force 10. To start with simple stuff, I love his color scheme of black and different shades of blue. The ice patterns on his arms and legs are really cool, and I love that his wings aren't completely perfect, almost as if they were somewhat cut up a little bit. I also love that unlike other UAF aliens where it's the simple green eyes, his pupils are a darker green and are in multiple spots. His character design is pretty good, but it gets even better when you learn why his characteristics are so clever. His design is a perfect blend of both of his main powers, cryokinesis and intangibility. So when you really look at him, he kind of resembles a corpse. Not only that, but when you look at Big Chill, he also can resemble a moth, and in many cases, moths are seen as a symbol of death. When you look at his head, it kind of resembles the shape of a skull, but not one-to-one to a human skull given that he's an alien. That's not even getting to one of the most creative parts about his design, his wings. I already mentioned that I like the looks of his wings overall. However, his wings have one special trait that no other winged alien has, the ability to cloak his body into a coat. This essentially gives him the cloaked form and the uncloaked form. His cloaked form also gives him some sort of ghostly appearance. I have even seen Big Chill's cloaked form be compared to the Grim Reaper, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the intention. And given that he's a ghostly alien, they also want to make sure that he sounds like one. Big Chill is played by D. Bradley Baker, who does a pretty damn good job with this character. He sounds appropriately ghostly and chilling at the same time.
That whole get mad and storm off act. Please. You're out of your league, Alan. You're the weakest one, and you know it. Your teammates know it too. I know. Chill, dude. See what I did there?
Big Chill's most notable ability is his cryokinesis. He has what you would expect like ice breath, however he can also make things freeze via contact whether he touches it physically or phases through it with his intangibility. He can also manipulate his ice in multiple ways, and while it's obvious, I'll still point out anyway that Big Chill can fly. With a great character design and a cool combination of powers, it's no surprise that Big Chill would be one of the most beloved aliens in the Alien Force 10. And as Alien Force continued, Big Chill would become one of the most popular aliens in the UAF era. To understand the decline in love for Big Chill, we must first establish why Big Chill was loved in the first place. So let's start by talking about his utilization with his debut in Kevin's Big Score. For his first appearance, Big Chill is used twice. The first time we see him is when Kevin steals the rust bucket so Ben gives chase. It's a pretty decent chase scene as it shows off a lot of cool stuff that Big Chill can do with his ice powers. On a side note, I just know Will Harang jumps for joy whenever this scene is shown because it shows how reckless Ben can be. He freezes this entire road and he just leaves it like that. Anyone who drives on that road is fucked. It was also really cool to see Big Chill use his intangibility to avoid some lasers. However, there is one mistake I want to bring up for this scene. Near the end of the scene, Big Chill turns invisible, which is not an ability he actually has. And I'm glad he doesn't have this ability as it helps differentiate him from Ghost Freak, the previous ghost-like alien. The second time we see Big Chill is in his fight against Volcanus. Not only do we get to see more intangibility, but it's also shown that when he phases through something, he can freeze it at the same time, which is a really clever way to combine both of his main powers. With 2 scenes in his debut, I think Big Chill made a pretty good impression, so let's see how he's utilized in his future appearances. Now, I'm not going to name every time Big Chill shows up, but I do want to mention some key moments where Big Chill really shines. Even though it's really short, I love his scene in Plumber's Helpers. In order to save Gwen from falling, he uses his ice breath to bust open a fire hydrant, and then freezes the water into a slide for Gwen. It's a very creative and underappreciated solution. I also like his scene in Alone Together. It was pretty cool to see Big Chill freeze the Dravik from the inside, and with the help of Reinrasik III's projectiles, the ice breaks apart, killing the Dravik. Even without those projectiles helping Big Chill in mind, this scene makes me really think on how brutal Big Chill can be in combat. Imagine he just freezes someone and breaks them into millions of pieces with a single punch. Kinda like Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat. Although now it makes me wonder if Big Chill can be defeated by a bitch slap just like Sub-Zero. 2 small moments I really like for Big Chill are in Voided and Birds of a Feather. In Voided, Big Chill is used to freeze up Dr. Anima's machine, and the fact that he could freeze all of this in such a short amount of time is insane. Like, it really shows how powerful Big Chill is. And in Birds of a Feather, one simple touch allows this entire wall to get frozen. Look at how quick it all freezes up. He can probably freeze an entire city in a minute, not even. And speaking of Big Chill's hands, in Single-Handed, we see that he can shoot ice beams. Although the coolest ways we see Big Chill's ice powers being used are in Above and Beyond. When he touches the floor, not only is it ice, but it's in a zigzag trail showing he can manipulate where the ice goes. And then when he uses his ice breath against Alan's fire, he has multiple streams of ice breath that go in multiple directions. This shit is so fucking cool. Why doesn't Big Chill fight like this all of the time? As we head into the Ultimate Alien side of things, there isn't as many interesting scenes for Big Chill as Alien Force. However, there are 2 episodes I want to bring up. The first one is Map of Infinity. While this one doesn't showcase any cool powers or anything, it was awesome to see Ben become Big Chill in front of other Necrophrygians and exemplify why the Omnitrix was made in the first place. As for the other episode, that would be Deep. While Big Chill doesn't do anything necessarily cool in this episode, there is one thing they reveal here, the fact that Big Chill can breathe underwater. Now, Big Chill doesn't need to necessarily be underwater to do this, but imagine if he froze the entire planet of Piscus. He can absolutely do that, because we've seen him freeze so much shit in such a quick amount of time, and if it prevented Egregore from escaping, that would be such an insane feat for Big Chill to have. There are 2 reasons as to why Big Chill isn't as interesting when it comes to his utilization in Ultimate Alien as he was in Alien Force. The first reason is because of Ultimate Big Chill. Now personally, I'm an Ultimate Big Chill fan, but I'm not here to talk about him specifically because he's an Ultimate. That's a story for another day. The other reason isn't necessarily Big Chill's fault. When you go from Alien Force to Ultimate Alien, a lot of the aliens aren't going to have as many iconic scenes. Not because they're used badly, in fact the other Big Chill scenes I didn't mention are still pretty okay, but for the fact that we're already used to these aliens, so they don't have a need to give us extra creative stuff. Even with that in mind, I think Big Chill was handled pretty well in the UAF era. He has a lot of cool scenes and a lot of cool powers that were shown off. So as we move on to... Wait, what's that sound? Oh shit, someone's at the door, hold on. Oh my god, it's Big Chill! That's funny, I was just talking about you. What's that? You have news for me? What is it? Let me see. Holy shit, you're pregnant, Big Chill? How the fuck did that happen? Every 80 years? Wow. Alright, we'll see you later, Big Chill. Wait, what's that? Before I forget, buy a new car. Oh my god, Big Chill, you ate my car? Oh, Big Chill. Oh, Snow, you didn't. We'll be back after these messages. If you think I was gonna forget about Big Chill being pregnant in Alien Force, you're sorely mistaken. Not only is this one of the most iconic Big Chill moments for how bizarre it is, but just from a personal standpoint, this is one of my absolute favorite episodes in all of Ben 10. Save the Last Dance. While I absolutely adore everything in this episode, I'm only going to talk about the Big Chill specific scenes with him. The episode starts out as normal. Ben sees people in trouble, and he turns into an alien to save them. And in this case, of course, it's Big Chill. We also get to see his transformation sequence for the first time, and I think it's pretty good. We get a nice scene of Big Chill's ice powers, intangibility, and his strength, but then things start to get weird when Ben starts to eat a car and acts aggressive. Over the course of the episode, Big Chill grows more aggressive and eats more and more metal. And it's not just relegated to cars. He eats street lamps, car wash signs, statues made of metal. I could really use Big Chill in Dragon Quest VIII, because holy shit, grinding liquid metal slimes is a pain in the ass. And one thing I especially like is that we see how this actually affects Ben in his human form. After the first time he eats a car, in the morning he sees a piece of metal in his teeth, and later on in the episode he has a weird craving for pickles. We also see Ben become Big Chill against his will, even when he's already in another alien form. At first it's speculated that maybe Big Chill is evil and is possessing Ben, similar to Ghost Freak in Classic, which is a cool correlation given that they're both ghost aliens. However, in actuality, it's eventually revealed that Big Chill was pregnant the entire time. So that means it is actually canon that Ben is pregnant at some point, which is very fucking funny to tell people who don't watch this franchise. It's also my favorite episode for my family members to react to for the first time because their first reaction is priceless. As for why Big Chill was pregnant, Big Chill species, Necrophrygians, reproduce asexually every 80 years or so. They create a nest by eating a bunch of metal, consuming lava, and then melting it together into a giant nest for the babies. When the babies are born, they go off somewhere in deep space to feed off solar plasma. Not only was this a very funny and bizarre twist for this episode, but we also got to learn some lore on Big Chill's species. I don't think we get enough of Ben learning about the species of the Omnitrix's lore, so the fact that we get a whole episode like this to learn a bit about Big Chill's is pretty cool. I think it's a pretty cold take to say that this is one of Big Chill's most iconic moments, if not just for the bizarre nature of it all. I don't think it's pointed out enough that Big Chill can just eat metal naturally. Like, I know we have Upchuck and eventually Edel and everything, and let's say a car is being thrown at him, he can just phase through it, but imagine if he just ate the whole fucking car up, because his mouth can extend really wide. Even with the twist in mind, if you rewatch this episode, there's a lot of replay value from watching it because you get to notice all the foreshadowing, and it's just such a great time, and it's such a great moment for Big Chill lore. Before I talk about Big Chill and Omniverse and how he's handled there, I want to take some time to talk about some other forms of media that Big Chill appears in. Let's start with Big Chill's toys. Big Chill has a standard 4-inch figure. He also has a 4-inch figure when he's cloaked, but I've never seen this figure in stores in person when I was a kid, so I didn't even know this existed until like recently. Big Chill also has a 6-inch DNA alien hero figure. This figure allows you to switch between his cloaked and uncloaked form, which kind of reminds me of a Transformer figure, which is pretty cool. He also has a Lego toy, and the same case goes for Chromosome and Swampfire, but I forgot to talk about it in my Glowdowns video. Big Chill also has a light-up figure. I didn't know this one existed until like last year, and I love that he's doing one of the poses from his artwork. Then of course there's Big Chill's bobblehead. This was actually the very first thing of Alien Force I ever saw because it was one of the few things that was leaked before Alien Force's premiere. Big Chill also has a vehicle toy, and the figurine actually makes him look like he's intangible. Big Chill also makes many appearances in the video games. Before I talk about any of his actual combat, I love the fact that when he blocks he becomes intangible. That's really cool. Regarding Big Chill's fighting, the game I want to highlight most is Vilgax's attacks. I like a lot of the combos that Big Chill can pull off, such as a dive kick that leads into ice spikes on the floor, or when he shoots ice spikes down below him. Although one thing I really wish was in the show is the fact that in this game he can create ice maces around his fist and then throw rapid punches. I think that is so sick and underappreciated. And while Ben 10 Rise of Hex may not be the best game ever, I do love the fact that Big Chill can freeze opponents with his intangibility just like in the show, something the other Ben 10 games don't do. Big Chill also appears as a playable racer in Ben 10 Galactic Racing. The reason I want to bring this up is because Big Chill's home planet is one of the racetracks. From an aesthetic standpoint, I really like how Kilmus looks in this game because the original lore for this planet is the fact that at some point way in the distant past, there was an event that caused Kilmus's climate to switch. In the present, it's an ice age. However, in the past, it's possible that this planet once had multiple biomes, as well as vast oceans. You can sort of see this in Galactic Racing because in this picture, it kind of looks like a tidal wave that's been frozen. And speaking of Big Chill's planet, the description on the Ben 10 wiki is really depressing. Necrophrygians may be able to exist on their home planet, they can never truly be a part of it, nor any concrete world. As dark as that is, I do love this description because it gives me classic series vibes. With a good amount of screen time and utilization, as well as a good design, lots of toys, and a bunch of exposure in the Ben 10 video games, it's no surprise that for a good chunk of time, Big Chill was one of the most popular aliens. He had a lot going for him, but eventually, all of this popularity would begin to decline. So what exactly went wrong? There are multiple reasons as to what caused a switch up for Big Chill. So as we move on to Omniverse, we're going to start by talking about his most obvious reason. And that's his character design. There is a lot to unpack here for Omniverse Big Chill's design. The most drastic change goes to his anatomy. His upper body's a lot larger, his arms are more muscular, and his head shape is different as well. The biggest hurdle to cross when it comes to Omniverse Big Chill is whether or not you like the change in Big Chill's body. For years I've always preferred the design for Big Chill in UAF, but over time, I'm not gonna lie, I've grown to really appreciate Omniverse Big Chill's design. I think the ice and ghostly elements are still combined pretty well here. He retains his ice patterns as well as his cool blue color scheme, but his limbs and his overall stance looks a lot more monstrous. I also like that his wings are more jagged to resemble bat wings sort of. And the way the black and blue separate on his torso kinda reminds me of the fur you would see on a moth. I know a lot of people really dislike the fact that Big Chill has like this hunchback look when he's cloaked, but I love the hunchback look for his cloaked form. And I also like that his bottom wings are a lot smaller. My only real negative about this design is the belt. It was not needed in this design at all. Whenever I think of the overuse of the belt in Omniverse, the biggest example I think of is Big Chill because it just feels so out of place. They should have just kept the Omnitrix badge on the chest. In fact, in the episode's special delivery, we see a flashback of Alien Force Ben, and we get to see what this actually would look like. Not to mention the black separation has a spot where the Omnitrix badge clearly could go, so I don't know why they didn't just do that. Now, if you were to ask me if I prefer UAF or Omniverse Big Chill's design, for the longest time I would tell you UAF easily. But as I examined Omniverse Big Chill more and more over the years, I started to really prefer this design. I know the bigger body is a drastic change, but it kinda makes sense given his powers. Bigger lungs means a bigger lung capacity for his ice breath. And when you look at UAF Big Chill and compare it to other aliens in UAF, his body is very similar in terms of proportions. Sure, there can be minor differences, such as Lodestar's pointy shoulders or Chromostone's crystals, but they all have the exact same concept. So when you look at Big Chill's body in Omniverse, it stands out more. Now, while I've grown to love Big Chill's design in Omniverse, I can't say the same for most of the fandom. Whenever Big Chill is talked about in any capacity, a lot of people like to bring up that they ruined Big Chill. And most of the time, it's because of his design. While his design was very odd to get used to at first, I've grown to really love it, so you can consider me an Omniverse Big Chill defender, at least when it comes to his design. A design only makes half the alien. There's the matter of his actual screen time and utilization. So let's see, even with a controversial design, if we can say that Big Chill was handled pretty well in Omniverse. The first time we get to see Omniverse Big Chill would be in the episode of Predators and Prey Part 2. Big Chill appears at the end of the episode and saves Rook from Kyber. Nothing too crazy happens in this scene, but it is nice that we get to see Big Chill's flight, intangibility, and ice breath all in one appearance, given that it's our first time seeing Omniverse Big Chill and it's at the end of Season 1. Not only is this the first time we get to see Big Chill in Omniverse period along with his powers, but we also get to hear what he sounds like, and he's still played by D. Bradley Baker, but I swear his voice sounds way more echoey than UAF.
He stole. He ran. That's Kevin. I hate a cold reception. Kyber and his buddies have been collecting alien predator DNA for the last 5 years. Now that's cold-blooded. This should finally prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Ben Tennyson can survive just fine without anyone's help, thank you.
I feel like the differences in both the UAF and Omniverse voice are so minor that there's no point in being passionate on which one I like more, but if I had to pick, I go with Omniverse's. It kinda sounds like he's always in an ice cavern, which is pretty cool. As we move on to more scenes for Big Chill and Omniverse, there are a few keystone episodes that I feel like are worth mentioning. The first episode I want to talk about is Tummy Trouble. When Big Chill is first used, we get a pretty decent space battle. Big Chill flies through space and freezes a few incursion ships, which is fine enough, but what I really like is the fact that he uses his intangibility in order to fuck up one of the incursion ship's controls. And when he appears for the second time, I like that he shoots his ice breath at an incursion from a long distance, and then goes closer while still shooting his ice breath at the incursion. And while his scene in this episode is very short, in Something Zombozo This Way Comes, I like that right before Ben collides with a car, he turns into Big Chill to save himself with his intangibility. The last two episodes I want to bring up are Malefactor and Showdown Part 1. The main thing I like from both of these episodes is that we get to see Big Chill interact with his natural predator. Now, most of these scenes are just Big Chill running away from this creature or getting hypnotized, but there is a few things I do like. For starters, when he first sees the Cycloropton, the name of the predator, Big Chill covers his eyes with his antennas, which shows that it makes sense for him to have antennas because it helps him with his natural predator. And in the case of Malfactor, I just like seeing Big Chill fly fast and phase through buildings in Omniverse. We don't get enough of it, but what we did get was still pretty cool. And that's about it for the episodes I really want to mention. I suppose if there was any other episodes I did want to briefly discuss, I guess Ultimate Heist is okay, because I think Big Chill scenes in there, while nothing special, is still pretty entertaining, and we even get to see Albedo use Big Chill, and I actually really like the pale color scheme. It reminds me a lot of how he looked in Alien Swarm. But there is a reason as to why there's not many Big Chill episodes I want to mention for him. And that very reason is I think the true reason why people may feel like Big Chill was ruined besides his design. Even when an alien may have a drastic change in design, they could still make up for it with cool and creative scenes. A prime example is Brainstorm. His design going from UAF to Omniverse is pretty drastic, but the one fight scene that we do get with this alien is considered one of his best, if not his best moment in the entire franchise. And while Big Chill does have a scene or two to do some pretty cool stuff, in Omniverse, he's kind of like a cameo alien to me. There are a lot of episodes he does appear in, but it's only for like 10 seconds, not even. There's episodes like Ben Again, where he's used to phase through a Mr. Smoothie to grab the Chrono Navigator and then he just leaves. Or episodes like Frogs of War Part 1, where he freezes Emperor Milius and then he's gone. That wasn't even like 6 seconds. In fact, his final 2 appearances are cameos. One of them is Something Zombozo This Way Comes, and the other one is Let's Do the Time War Again. In Something Zombozo This Way Comes, I did mention that I do like that he's used to save Ben from crashing into a car, but in Let's Do the Time War Again, he just freezes Exoskull and Subdora, and then he's gone, which is something we've seen him do a million times. Maybe I'm just overthinking, but despite having a handful of appearances, I feel like Big Chill was somewhat of an afterthought in Omniverse. As for why Big Chill took a dip in quality when it came to his screen time, I believe it has to do with 2 factors. The first one is that he's an Alien Force alien. I feel like Omniverse took priority in the classic series aliens, given that they didn't appear for a good while Alien Force aliens had 2 series to shine. As for that other reason, it has to do with just one specific classic alien, Arctic Guana. After only appearing twice in the classic series, Arctic Guana gets to return in Omniverse. And to his credit, we do get some pretty creative scenes with him, which does show that Omniverse could have given Big Chill similar scenes. Now, this video isn't about Arctic Guana, however, if I was to compare his utilization to Omniverse Big Chill, I would say that Arctic Guana got the better handling, hands down. I say this, yet Arctic Guana didn't even get to appear as much as Big Chill, but he still managed to get some creativity in his scenes, while Big Chill was just there cause, I don't know, someone was just offering hors d'oeuvres in the form of quarters or something. Big Chill could have definitely have taken advantage of Omniverse's kinetic animation to give some pretty creative scenes. We've seen how he fights in UAF, and there's a lot of cool moments that he has, especially moments like Above and Beyond. Just imagine how that would look in the Omniverse art style. This is why I feel like Big Chill would be considered ruined by a lot of the fandom. His design is one thing, but when his quality and utilization somewhat plummets, that adds fuel to the fire. With all of Big Chill's scenes in Omniverse, half of it is either him just running away or being hypnotized, or just freezing someone for a quick second and then leaving. It also doesn't help that when comparing UAF and Omniverse Big Chill, we only really see Big Chill freeze 1 or 2 enemies before leaving in Omniverse. In UAF, we see him freeze walls and giant contraptions, freezing stuff via contact for combat. If we got more stuff like this for Omniverse Big Chill, it would certainly help. Now, that's not to say that I feel like people would be less critical about Big Chill's design in Omniverse. I still think it's a pretty good portion as to why Big Chill's popularity declined. But if his screen time was more impactful and more interesting, I think people would be a lot less harsh to Omniverse Big Chill. In fact, one thing I often see is that since Albedo uses the ultimates in Omniverse, people think that the bigger Big Chill design should have been used for his ultimate form. Just imagine if he had like a more demon-like look, given that he has a fire aesthetic. His wings would have the flames aesthetic, of course, but what if they went full force with like the ghostly design and give him like demon-like motifs like horns? Or take different traits from different types of moths? And considering how phenomenal a lot of the Ultimates look in Omniverse, I think Ultimate Big Chill would have looked fucking amazing. The fact that people said that Omniverse Big Chill should have had his design used for Ultimate Big Chill implies to me that people like the design, but not in the context that it's Big Chill, similar to Blossom Swampfire. And on a quick side note, I forgot to mention that Ben 23 uses Big Chill, which he dubs Freeze Ghost. I like the white and blue color scheme, but the reverse teeth colors is kinda weird to me. But it is still pretty cool that his color scheme still gives off that ghostly appearance. And in a way, now that I look at it, it kinda reminds me of Sans, and I don't know how to feel about that. If you're not a fan of Omniverse Big Chill, do I think that these points will help change your mind? I want to say at least somewhat. It took a lot of time, but eventually over the course of a few years, I started to realize the charm in Omniverse Big Chill. His redesign may be very drastic and not everyone's cup of tea, but I really like the changes they gave him. I just wish I could give the same praise to his screen time and utilization in Omniverse. When you have an alien that doesn't really do too much, the main thing you're probably going to focus on is his aesthetic more than anything else, besides his missed potential in the way he could use his powers. Though in the case of Big Chill, since he was already an Alien Force and Ultimate Alien, I feel like that particular point wouldn't come to mind for this alien specifically. The main issue people really have with him is his design, and the lack of creativity in his scenes brings more attention to his aesthetic. And because his aesthetic is very drastic and controversial, many people are going to give him more flack than you would expect. I really do wish they bothered more with Big Chill in terms of what he can do. They didn't even bother with merchandise for him besides a figure, which by the way is fucking expensive nowadays. You gotta poach a Necrophagian to even afford one. But as always, I want to know what you think. Were you always a fan of Big Chill, or did you end up liking him less because of his changes in Omniverse? Or did you always love him and favor him as an alien, or have him as one of your favorites regardless? Or perhaps like me, it took some time, but you eventually grew to really love Omniverse Big Chill. Maybe not enough to favor it like I do, but at least to a point where you're not as harsh towards it. Or have you always been a Big Chill hater since day one? I appreciate you guys for stopping by, and as always, happy night hunting.